Hello and welcome back to the Cracking Fang YouTube channel. Today we're going to be doing another mock product architecture video. We're going to be designing TripAdvisor, and I have purposely made this one at the E4 scope. What does that exactly mean? At an E4, with these types of interviews, you're typically going to cover most of the important topics for the design, but there will be obvious gaps in your design, issues with your design, or things that you simply didn't cover that a more senior candidate would. This is fine. Obviously, this was my intention to give people who are just coming into product architecture and maybe have an E4 interview lined up to understand kind of the things they need to be talking about and the level of detail they need to be giving. This really wouldn't fly for a more senior candidate, but for someone who's just coming in at the E4 level, it's typically good and should cover some of the kind of bases that you'll want to talk about. We obviously have two other design videos on this channel and more to come, and they will be kind of at higher level, but this one, as said, is kind of for that mid-level engineer. So hopefully you find it useful. Before we jump into the video, I just want to take a shout out to our channel members who have been supporting the channel financially. So I'll show their names on the screen here. Thank you for your ongoing support. Let's get into the video. Okay, so for today's product architecture mock, we're going to be doing things a little bit differently. In the past, where we were given basically a product and we had to figure out all of the requirements and what it would look like, in this case, we're actually going to be given a mock from our designers of what the product should look like, and it's up to us to actually make the decisions on how to make it work. In today's example, we're going to be designing TripAdvisor or a TripAdvisor clone. Now, we've been given this mock by our designers, and I'll kind of move the screen up and down because some of it is actually cut off here. But basically, we can see that, we have the app. You can search for a location, and you're going to see some kind of tours that you can do in that place. In this case, it's Bath, England, and we can see, okay, there's some tours here, there's some day trips, and then there's some top attractions in the city of Bath itself. So this is our mock. Obviously, we can gather some information here and maybe we can start to jot these things down. So let me just change the color here, make it a little bit easier to see. So we're probably, we want to have like a search bar. So search bar for a location. What else we're going to see? So for a given location, we need to display I guess things to do, right? Things to do there. And this can be like tours. This can be, I guess, attractions or, other things, day trips, I guess. Day trips, right? Okay, so we have that. And obviously, we need to show some things for each place. So kind of let's look at what the designers have told us and figure out what kind of are the requirements here. So we can see that obviously, each place we're going to have to show the title of it. Makes sense. You probably want to know what you're going to. So we want to have a title. We want to have some sort of rating. So obviously, you want to know what's a good experience, what's a bad experience, what's a good tour, what's a bad tour. So we can probably have a rating. Looks like it's out of 5 here. And then we can have the number of, I guess, reviews. As we can see here, hopefully it's easy to see. Maybe I can zoom in a bit without ruining. Okay, that should be okay. All right, so we have the number of reviews. Obviously, we're going to have the price per adult, and that's going to be, in some currency, and then what else can we do? It looks like we also have the type of tour that we also want to have. So type of tour, and let's see what else we can gather from this mock. It looks like, okay, well, this one is mostly just like things that you can actually book, and then this one just looks like more of things that you can do there. So I guess there is that distinction of, okay, these are just the sites that are in this particular location, and then we actually have, experiences that we can book. All right, so now that we have that kind of in our heads, let us kind of just move over to the side and maybe we can actually start thinking about kind of some of the data that we're going to need to store here. Obviously, we don't have to go through everything, but just to give us a sense of kind of the models we might need. Let us just chart this out. So we're probably going to have, some sort of like, I guess, I don't want to say location, but I guess let's just call it a site, like something that you can see in a particular place. Obviously, that's not the best name, but it's okay for now. So obviously, each one we're probably going to have its own ID. It's going to have a title. What is it called? What's the description of the place? Where is it located? What city? What country is it located in? What are the coordinates? If we want to see this on a map somehow, if you like have a map view and then you actually want to render all of the locations, maybe as like a pin, it would be good to have the coordinates. Let's see, we obviously want to have the reviews, and this will just be like a list of review models. We're not going to bother with this right now because I don't think the model for the review is that important. Let's see, and then we can have the rating, and let's see, maybe the review count, so that we don't have to like always run a query to get the review count. We can just have it immediately on the place itself, and then maybe we can store the type that it is. So for example, if we go back to our mock here, I don't know, like historic site, bridges, I don't know, it'll just be some big enum which stores the types. And yeah, okay, so that's kind of just like the basic one. And then obviously we have, our tours here, or something that you can actually book. And we don't have to actually go through the process of defining all of this again. We can just assume that it's really going to take pretty much all of the fields from the other one, except we also need to store the price. So if you can book this, it's going to have a price. And then it's also going to have the currency, because you need to be able to actually pay for this. So those are basically the two models we need. Obviously, we're going to need a user model if you're going to be writing reviews and all of this, and if you're going to be using the site user model. But let's kind of just focus on the actual product itself, and let's not get lost in the weeds of what we need to actually store for the users. So kind of what are some of the design considerations we need to actually make here? So there's quite a few that immediately pop up to me. And the first one is going to be, how do we actually handle the separation between mobile clients and so mobile versus web clients, right? So if we want to have this application or this product be working on, our iPhone, our Android phone versus on our computer, then the needs are going to change. And the reason for this is obviously that the web page that you display for a web client is going to be drastically different than that on a mobile device. And obviously the data requirements are going to be different. So off the bat, we know that we probably need to take the client into consideration, and where this really is going to manifest itself is going to be in the kind of API section. And what we're going to need here is we're definitely going to need some sort of like pagination. Obviously, as the number of places on our kind of site grows, then the number of results we're going to get back when we search is going to grow as well. And it obviously wouldn't make sense to fetch every single possible place you can get, because it would just take too long. You would slam your database. And, if you tried to fetch that much data, well, what if someone was on their data, they weren't actually using Wi-Fi, then you could possibly eat up a lot of their data. It's not a good experience. It would take a long time for them to load. So ideally, we want to have some sort of kind of pagination. And also, we need to distinguish between the clients, right? You can fetch a lot more data for a web client than you can for a mobile client. So we need to have some sort of pagination. And this is where we kind of run into kind of our first trade-off, which will ultimately be how to actually structure our API to handle this, right? Because pagination, it's not just magic. It doesn't just happen. It will require us on the kind of back end to make some decisions as to how we want to implement this. And I think there's basically, I'm sure there's many more, but 3 kind of high level ways that we can actually think about pagination. And one is basically the limit offset based pagination, where you basically say, okay, I want 5 elements per page. This is the first page, fetch those 5 elements, then fetch the next 5 elements, blah, 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 blah. And then you use the offset to basically tell you which page you want to go. So obviously this is pretty easy. The query that you write for this is relatively straightforward. I'm not going to get too much into like the SQL that you need here. If you want, I can link some resources to learn more about this type of pagination. But yeah, ideally, it's pretty easy to implement. You can jump straight to a page, which is really nice. One issue with limit offset pagination is that if you delete elements, then the data that you show per page can actually kind of get morphed. So if you're just fetching the first 5 elements and then you actually delete one, then you might not get those elements that you want. You might not get all 5. So, you have to deal with deletions, which, okay, maybe it's not the biggest deal. And then actually the higher offset you go, so say theoretically you want to go to page, 3,000, that's going to be quite an expensive query for your database. There are ways around it, but it's just something to keep in mind. So that's one option we can go with, is limit offset based pagination. Then we also have cursor based pagination, where basically you have some ID or some deterministic way of figuring out kind of where you are in your result set. And then you can say, okay, give me the next 5 after that. And then you can update the cursor and basically, go from there. So this one really just solves the problem of having gaps, where if you delete elements, it doesn't really matter because you're just getting 5 forward or back from where you were. You don't really have to worry about gaps because if one gets deleted, it doesn't matter. You're just going to get 5 more anyway. But if you try to filter on more than just one column here, if you try to sort on more than one column, then you're going to have additional complexity with your cursor, because now you have to take into account 2 different fields in your cursor, and it just becomes a headache. Some APIs will handle this for you, but it is something that you need to do on the back end, so it increases complexity. The last option is actually to use GraphQL. They have pretty much pagination baked in. You don't really have to do too much. It kind of just works out of the box. So while GraphQL is great, and you also get the benefits of not having to fetch, as much data from the server, because you can just select the fields you want. You can take as many as you need. GraphQL does have a cost in that it's not as common as REST APIs. So if we kind of think bigger picture, if we were to ship this product with GraphQL, it would potentially solve some of the issues we have with pagination. It works great with mobile clients and with desktop clients, but it might require a bit of a culture shift in the company. So if we kind of just think bigger picture, it's like, okay, are engineers ready to use GraphQL? Are they going to know how to do it? Is it going to cause problems with other teams that, okay, now we're on a GraphQL API, maybe they're on a REST API. How do we actually communicate between the two if we need to? So that's something to keep in mind. Whereas, GraphQL has a lot of powerful things. It's, I wouldn't say an up-and-coming technology because it's been around for a long time, but it's not as popular. So there might actually need to be a cultural shift in the company to actually adopt this. And then if people don't know how to use it, are they going to write the correct APIs? So that's something to consider. Obviously, there is no right answer here. In a real interview, just pick the one that you're most comfortable with. I mean, I love GraphQL, so and I guess breaking the fourth wall here, I would just say maybe I'll just use GraphQL and I can justify the kind of shortcomings for it. But obviously, you can proceed to go forward with whichever one you like the most. It doesn't really matter as long as you justify it. Maybe your interviewer will have some kind of pushback on that, and then you can answer their questions. Anyway, kind of getting back on track. That is the kind of first trade-off we need to make is, okay, web versus mobile, and then how we're going to kind of deal with pagination. So we talked about the 3 options: limit offset, cursor, and GraphQL. Now, what's another consideration we're going to have to make? Well, let's now think about our kind of website, and we see that, okay, this is in English, and the prices are here in US dollars. Does that always make sense? Probably not. If we're going to be building a website that can have experiences and locations across the world, then we're going to run into the problem of, do we want to be showing English to people in South America? Do we want to be showing Spanish to people in Russia? Do we want to be showing Russian to people in Africa? Probably not. So we don't only want to be showing English, and we probably don't want to be showing prices in US dollars, or do we, right? Because this is a trade-off. So, how do we actually handle this internationalization? Because if you just load the site and it's only in English, well, what if I don't speak English? I can't use the site. So let's now kind of think about the internationalization problem. Let's see, I18N. So internationalization. What are kind of the considerations we need to do here? So obviously the language consideration, the currency consideration, and what else? That's probably the main two that we want to think about. So if we think about it, the name of the place where we're going to be looking at probably isn't going to change, right? Like, it's still Stonehenge, whether or not you're in Spanish, in Russian, in African language. It doesn't matter, right? It's still gonna be called Stonehenge. Sure, you can try to like translate it literally using the characters and the sounds in whatever target language, but I think if we were to design this, we can probably be fine with the name here staying the same. Whoops, why is that pen so big? We can probably be fine with the name staying the same, and we don't really have to change that. Where we will want to do is probably we want to have a translation for, common things like what type of tour it is. This text here from whatever per adult, that can be translated since it's relatively fixed for basically every single thing we have here. So we know exactly the format of it. Therefore, we can just have translations ready to go. And depending on kind of the language or the region that the person is visiting the site from, then we can just load it in that local language. And obviously reserve, this is standard across all of them, so we can actually just have this translation ready to go. You load the Spanish site and it just has it in Spanish, so you don't have to worry about that. So that's fine. We can have those kind of translations ready, and this brings up the question of where are we actually going to have these translations done, right? Is this going to be done on the server side or on the client side? Now, in this particular case, because nothing is actually changing here based on kind of the text, we can actually do this all on the server side. If we needed some sort of live update of the text based on, how much time has passed or something, we might actually want to do this on the client side. But since this text stays static, no matter what happens on the page, really, then we don't need to do anything on the client side. We can actually just generate it on the server. It's not going to change. Therefore, we don't have to worry about the client handling it, which makes it a little bit easier because in the client, the code is a little bit simpler. We don't have to worry about, basically sending the translations to the client and then making sure that they have the correct ones, downloading them. If the region changes, we can actually just do it all on the server. You tell us basically what language the user is using the site in or what location they're in. We can deduce that from the network request, and then we can just return the correct kind of translation for them. Of course, we can just default to English if we don't know where they are, and then we can just choose to maybe show them the currency that they're searching in. So for example, here I've explicitly selected for US dollars, but if it's your first time on the site, maybe we just assume that, okay, for the translation, we can use your location, and then we can actually just use whatever the local currency of wherever you're looking for is. Because one thing we have to consider is that obviously the price will change. Most likely, whoever created this this tour or whatever this experience is, will probably be using the local currency. So whoever's in Stonehenge in England probably wrote the price in pounds sterling, right? They didn't do it in dollars, and they're not going to sit there and write the price in every single currency. It's up to us to figure that out. Now, obviously, that means that we have to have some sort of extra API to basically fetch all the current currency conversions and basically do the math to tell, okay, it's 100 pounds. How much is it going to be in dollars? So that does add complications. Obviously, we can reduce that complexity by saying, okay, we're only going to support showing a certain amount of currencies. Maybe we only want to show pounds, euros, dollars, whatever other currency we might want to support, or we just decide to show everything in US dollars to make it simpler, because then the more currencies we have to support, the more kind of live rates we have to get, and it just adds complexity. Okay, can we cache it? What if the currency changes? Most likely not going to be too much fluctuation during the day, but that's just something that we need to keep in mind. And then also, for the translation, we can make our life easier by just choosing to only support a certain amount of languages. Maybe we just support the most popular languages in the world, English, Spanish, whatever. Obviously, that would exclude some people, but we do need to draw a line and say, okay, well, we can't support every single possible language in the world. One, we don't have the experts to actually translate everything for us. That's, another cost outside of just developing this product. And, we have to make sure it's all correct. And it's just a pain in the ass, basically, to support too many languages. So we do need to have some sort of trade-off there to actually make sure that we're not just trying to show every single language. So those are kind of the internationalization kind of considerations we need to make. And I think what we decided was ultimately what we want to do is say, okay, well, we're going to have server handle the translations for us, and then we're going to support a fixed amount of languages and currencies to make our life easier. Otherwise, it's just going to be too much of a pain. Okay, so that is kind of some of the other considerations we need to make. Obviously, the internationalization one. What else could we possibly need to consider? Well, if we're going to have people leaving reviews, then most likely we're going to have to handle these reviews and all of the joy that comes with basically allowing people to type whatever they want in a review. So let's kind of think about some of the considerations from the product aspect that might come with allowing people to leave reviews, right? So the first thing that we want to basically consider is obviously people might use foul language. So we might want to handle that when dealing with reviews. Now, another thing that people could leave fake reviews. You could do some sort of spam or advertising. I think we've all seen kind of comments or reviews where people are just plugging some sort of website or some pyramid scheme or something. Unfortunately, people aren't always just leaving genuine reviews. There are kind of bad actors out there. So, these are all things that we have to consider. Now, most of this we probably want to handle in two ways. And the first one is going to be some sort of verification. So typically, okay, maybe you create an account on our website, but you need to have some sort of verification, whether that be via email, I don't know, some sort of like social login, or some other kind of verification where we can like send you a code. Maybe it's like an SMS based verification that you're a real person. And, of course, people can still mess with the system, but at least this adds kind of like an extra layer of protection. Maybe if someone's running a bot script to create a bunch of fake reviews, this might at least slow them down, or the requirement to basically have valid emails, maybe that's going to deter them. So that's one thing that we could do, is basically have some sort of verification of the user, I guess. Of the user. And then the second thing we could possibly have is, obviously we're going to need some sort of like checks on the back end. And the reason that we typically want to do this on the back end is because the amount of things we're going to want to check for will constantly be evolving. It's probably going to be some sort of combination of like string parsing and applying rules on the review, checking it for bad language, checking it for, links or some sort of like, I don't know, you maybe even try to do a SQL injection attack or something like that. And then maybe you want to see, okay, has this user posted before, and other rules that you might need access to the data. We probably don't want to do this on the front end. One, we might not have the data required for all of the checks we want to do. 2, there's a lot of complex checks we might want to do, and if we're doing all of those on the front end with every keystroke that you press, checking that you haven't typed something naughty in, then might slow down the experience and give the user basically just like, oh, this is lagging. I'm not going to leave a review because every time I type a key, then the entire thing slows down. So I don't want to deal with that. So probably we're just going to outsource this to the back end. Someone can submit the review, and we simply just, we don't need to post the review immediately. We can check it and then post it later, right? And, we can kind of spoof the user if we want. We can even just say, okay, well, you've submitted your review. We can just show it for them on the list of reviews, but actually it won't be live for everyone else. So it just looks like it's gone up. And that way they can see like, okay, they've got my review. And then actually at a later time, we'll be like, okay, your review is now live. Your review's now been posted. So that is something else we can consider. Now let's go back to kind of the product. Let's see if there's anything else that we've kind of missed. I guess those are kind of the main product considerations we can make. I'm sure there's obviously probably a lot more we could do. Perhaps we could talk about, at this point, maybe the kind of API we might need here. And let's see, where's my text? So we probably are going to want some sort of API which says, get, I don't know, we'll just call it experiences by location. And this might take, what can we take here? I don't know, we can take the location city. We can take the location country. And what else can we take? The page size, obviously we need to paginate this. We don't want to fetch basically every single result here. That would be a lot of data, and obviously some clients can't handle that, so we'll have the page size. And again, page size will be determined based on the client we have. Mobile clients will get less results than desktop clients. What else can we have? So we can have the language, and then I guess this would default to English. And then I don't know, we could have like currency. This would default, let's just say, to USD. And then we would basically get back a list of kind of, I guess we'll just call it experiences or tours or whatever. It can be like a mixed thing here, depending on how we want to show it. And then from there we can get the data that we need. So obviously when you see one of these experiences or tours or places, you probably want to be able to click into it. So once you click into it, that you then will actually fetch all of the data for that place. So we are going to need some sort of API which basically just fetches the, I guess, get experience by ID. So you're going to get the experience ID, and then you're just going to return the experience itself, and then you can basically render a page which is going to show all the stuff for that given experience. What else might we want? I guess we can have like a submit review API. So we can say, I don't know, the experience ID. This is going to be something, I guess, the text of your review. We're gonna have the rating, so it's gonna be some stars out of 5. And then it should be, I don't know, some other information. I guess, I don't know, when you attended or something if we want. That's probably fine. We can just ignore that for now. So those are probably the kind of main APIs you would need. Let's see, is there anything else we might want to do? Oh, okay, obviously we're gonna have we have the get experiences by location. That's fine, that's the search bar. I think that is probably all of the kind of main things that we might need here. So obviously this is a bit of a more simple example, but it's just really to kind of illustrate that sometimes you may be just given a sort of mock UI, and then it's up to you to kind of figure out what you need from the UI, and then just kind of go into depth of what the elements are, how you would design things, what are some of the considerations you might need. And then you can just lead it that way. I think typically when we think of these design ones, they're really just like, okay, can you design, Instagram? And then everyone's just read how to do that and then kind of just start regurgitating. I think for these, where you're actually given a design and then you need to parse what information from the design, it's more aligned to what you would do in real life. Okay, you're working with, the design team. They give you the mock-up of what they think the product should look like, and then you can basically take that and then start thinking about the design considerations you would need to make that a reality. So yeah, I think that's probably all I want to do on this one. Haven't made a video in a while, so a bit rusty, but really just wanted to kind of show that there are other types of product architecture that you could get. This is one of them, and this is just kind of a light introduction to some of the topics. I do have plans to make another one, which will be more in depth, and there's a lot more to talk about. It will kind of build on some of the topics we talked about here today, so that's why I wanted to just do this light one, kind of get some of these off my chest, get back into making videos, and then we'll go into the more in-depth one with a lot more kind of hardcore considerations in the next video. So thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you found this useful and informative. If you did, why not leave a like, comment, and a subscription to the channel? Really helps me grow. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.